Wisconsin had some major elections yesterday, and the ramifications of those, I think, spread years into the future. First of all, most importantly, Janet Protasiewicz, liberal affiliated, not technically a Democrat, won the position to replace a former Wisconsin Supreme Court justice. That means that coming out of this, and by the way, you can bring up the results of the election, because the results, it's not just important that the liberal won. I'm gonna take a look at the margin there. It was an 11-point victory. I'm not khaki pants on MSNBC or whatever, but and I'm not like an expert on every area. An 11-point victory in a statewide race in Wisconsin is titanic. It is a very split state. You wouldn't know it to look at the state legislature, and we'll get to that. But normally these sorts of races can be 1 or 2 point affairs. 11 points means they really wanted the liberal over the conservative, and it's not difficult to figure out why. There's a few issues we're gonna talk about, but first of all, as they acknowledge here, and you can see the new justice in this picture, her position on abortion. Her position on abortion in a now 4-3 liberal court means that the 1849, I think it is, anti-abortion law will probably be overruled at some point. If the more conservative candidate, Kelly, had taken that seat, then that would not have happened, and you would have abortion being outlawed in Wisconsin. So for many people, this is incredibly significant, and it's gonna potentially last. The term is for 10 years, now means the liberals are up 4-3. There is another liberal justice's term expiring in 2025, and then a conservative in 2026, so expect even more of these major elections, and they're gonna be big. This one had over $40 million in spending. It is the most expensive judicial election in American history. And you may wonder why? Why this one Supreme Court spot in Wisconsin? Well, not only because of the future of abortion access and those sorts of things, but also the future of the state legislative and congressional map, which is about as gerrymandered as anyone has been able to make it. ChatGPT could not produce a more biased map than what they have had for about a decade, a little bit over a decade in Wisconsin. And that could be coming to an end soon with this new majority. We're gonna dive into that in a second, but Jared, what do you think?
Yeah, this is one of those things that has all these conservatives very upset, and maybe it was flying under the radar when we saw Trump getting arraigned and everything yesterday. But this is a big deal, and actually, this is one of those indications of the voting blocks that are changing. We saw what's going on in Tennessee with the 3 House members that are being booted out potentially tomorrow, but then also how so many young folks are up in the rafters. They don't care anymore about this whole thing about decorum and oh my God, let's wait and see, thoughts and prayers, but give them one more chance. Oh, they're working on it. You don't understand the legislative process. These young folks are sick of your stuff, you guys.
Yep.
So they understand what's going on. Folks read up on things. Young folks aren't stupid. So if you keep talking to even the 16-year-olds who aren't able to vote yet, guess what's coming up in 2 years, We've got 2024 coming up, and then after that, another midterms. All this continues to go downhill for them. And as they keep seeing this happen, it was shown throughout the voting block when it comes to this particular race, tons of young folks that are unwilling to get out of lines to vote because a Protasiewicz there was talking specifically about the things that are her values and things that she's ruling about that is in favor of folks that actually would like freedoms.
Yeah.
Not just based off of who's gonna appoint her and whoever's gonna get in office and all these things, and actually trying to give up to somebody some special interest. And people responded to that. Republicans feel like this isn't gonna be a something that continues, but I guess we'll wait and see.
Yeah, it was very exciting to see. The overall turnout is amazing. Again, it cannot be stressed enough how big of a victory this is. I don't know if I vocalized it, but I mentioned yesterday on the show that generally from the initial to the runoff election, the sort of system that they have there, the liberal usually does better. I had no expectation that it would be 11 points though. And thank you to all of the young voters, the student voters who waited in long lines to vote to produce this outcome. It is significant, not only for issues like abortion, although that is significant, but again, let's double down on how rigged the map is there. If you don't live there, there's no reason why you would necessarily know this. If you're outside of the country, you might say, what do you mean a rigged map? I know, it's crazy how our country works. Wisconsin is an incredibly split state in terms of Republicans and Democrats. But when you look at the state legislature, bear in mind, they come out of this election with a super majority, okay? because they have gerrymandered it so effectively for the state legislature elections as well as the congressional map. How rigged is it? In 2022, Wisconsinites elected a Democratic governor, a Democratic attorney general, a Democratic secretary of state, yet Republicans came out of it with a 64-35 advantage in the state assembly and a 22-11 majority in the state senate, double the seats of the other side. The GOP also secured a 6-2 advantage in the state's congressional delegation. Democrats have won 13 out of the last 16 statewide elections. It is incredibly clear that despite how ideologically split the state must be, or is, it's demonstrated to be when you poll like party registration and things like that. When you actually give them a choice between a Democrat and Republican, they err on the side of the Democrat. And despite that, they cannot get a Democratic state legislature because of those maps. It doesn't matter how popular the Democrats' positions are, nor how toxic the Republicans' positions are. This is what happens to us, quote unquote, democracy when you allow the party to decide its own map. And Dan Kelly was 100% going to allow that map to stand. Protasiewicz says, or hinted very strongly that she would be against it. And you have that. You have the fact that Wisconsin, in the wake of the 2020 election, was the only state Supreme Court that considered a challenge to the presidential election results. Now, thankfully, they did not allow it to be overturned, but that was definitely the plan for 2024. Protasiewicz is, I'm assuming based on what she said during the election, not gonna be on board for any of that. So all of this is incredibly significant. This one Supreme Court seat is huge, not just for the people of Wisconsin, but potentially for the entire country when it comes to our next presidential election. Which is why they are already talking in Wisconsin, the Republicans, about impeaching her. She doesn't even hold the position yet, and they are not even pretending that there's a reason. They're going to try to do it if they do it because they lost the election and they don't like losing elections. They don't like that. They've been able to lock down one party rule in the state assembly, in the state senate, but when you actually talk to the voters, they can't win. So they're just going to overrule it. It's very similar to how things work in Congress. They use the power they've been able to structurally lock in to exert power over the ones that actually rely on you having to appeal to the voters, and they can't do that. And so Dan Nodal, he's one of the Republicans. He was in a special election. His win yesterday, because he did get the win, gives them this super majority. By the way, he won with just over 50% of the vote, less than 1 percentage point ahead of the Democrat. For context, in that same district, Ron Johnson in 2016 won with 63% of the vote. So even in a Republican district, he barely squeaked by a win, but it might be enough to allow them to impeach a justice purely based on the fact that they don't want her to hold the position. If that happens, by the way, that has got to be national news. The Democrats have got to flood into the state. People need to shut down the state if they try to do that.
In this set, we're hearing national conservatives and Republicans talk about impeachment of Donald Trump for actual reasons. And they said, oh, this is a witch hunt and you're gonna go after this guy. And they're totally making up these charges. When you see the actual times when they actually make up charges, then we see things like this. The gerrymandering thing is similar to many other things that we celebrate in the country. You know, our democracy, but there's all these hidden things in it that make it, that completely goes against our democracy, but we celebrate as if it's this clean cut thing. That's what goes on here, similar to capitalism. Oh, capitalism is the best system in the world, and that's why we use it here. Yo, we don't have capitalism. We have a biased system that looks like capitalism to people who aren't paying close attention, and it doles out all kinds of advantages and monies to the people that pay the politicians that are in power to continue to keep that system going the way it is. And as everyone's fighting over the scraps, nobody's gonna have the energy or the power to go after the folks who are actually hoarding all of the power and the money. Let's keep it real.
Yeah, Wisconsin is a preview of what the entire country will look like if we allow the Republicans to make it that way. That's what they want. And look, largely from the beginning of America, it's been biased in those sorts of ways, the makeup of the Senate, the Electoral College, all of that. But they do not want to engage in democratic elections. They do not want to have to convince people that their positions are right or that they're better at governance or any of that sort of stuff. They want to automatically win. In Wisconsin, they've been able to do that for a decade. We potentially see a way out of that, and they're gonna do everything they can to make sure that that doesn't happen.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.